The Dallas Cowboys had their first OTA practice that was available to the media, and here is everything that we learned. I'm not going to waste a ton of your time. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's video. Let's get into it. For the first time this season, we get to see the 2026 Dallas Cowboys all together, the rookie class, the veterans, the coaching staff, Christian Parker, Brian Schottenheimer, all of those guys on the field together. The Cowboys have been practicing for a couple of days. I think they've had 2, maybe 3 practices since OTAs started. But today, Brian Schottenheimer spoke to the media and really laid a lot of things out. And I found a lot of interesting nuggets from his press conference. So today, let's list 6 notes that I have from the first day of media availability at Cowboys OTA, starting with number 1, Tyler Guyton is not being handed the left tackle job. Brian Schottenheimer had a lot of interesting things to say, but the one that people are probably going to talk about the most is what Schotty said about Tyler Guyton and Nate Thomas. They're going to have to fight for that left tackle spot. There will be competition at left tackle. They're going to make Tyler earn it. And the way that that's phrased tells me that this is Tyler Guyton's job to lose. They want him to win the job. It doesn't mean that they're giving up on Guyton or his career is in jeopardy this season, but it does mean that the Cowboys are not going to just treat him like an automatic starter, that he can lose his job. The Cowboys need more consistency at left tackle after really 2 years of Guyton having a ton of ups and downs. Nate Thomas being involved gives them a true camp competition, or at least a way to pressure Tyler Guyton, because he really, really needs it. I talked about it in another video, but this feels like it's it for him. If there's someone under a ton of pressure, especially on the offensive side of the ball, it is Guyton. He's got to figure it out this year. A first-round pick, a fifth-round pick, a undrafted free agent. The Cowboys need you to produce. And this is, if there's one team in the league that it will draft another offensive tackle or an offensive lineman next year and not wait to fill that spot, they'll wait to fill other spots on the defensive side of the ball or let guys try to figure it out. But if you don't think they'll draft another offensive lineman to replace you, you are mistaken, especially with Dak Prescott getting a little bit older. You can't have him running for his life every single snap or having to tweak the offensive game plan to help your left tackle. So this is obviously a big year for Tyler Guyton. It feels like Brian Schottenheimer is kind of pushing him to do better things. I still think it's his job to lose, but if he does lose it, it's a bad sign for the trajectory of his career, but also for the offense. We saw Nate Thomas play a good bit of snaps last year, and he had just as many ups and downs throughout the entire 2025 season. There were some good, there was some bad mixed in there as well. I just think this is a public, you have to figure it out right now for Tyler Guyton. Note number 2, Donovan Ezeraku and Deron Bland are being eased through this offseason program. Neither one of those guys were on the field today. They're not going to see a bunch of practice action, probably in OTAs, into mini camp. Schottenheimer said that they're trying to be smart with their injury recoveries. And this is obviously important for Donovan Ezeraku. I just made a video on him and how he could have a breakout season in year 2. But the injury does worry me a little bit. The offseason surgery and the recovery coming off of a rookie year, that was good, but much like other guys on this team, had its ups and downs. Coming back from that, he really needs to be 100% for training camp. Like, at the end of the day, right now, I'm not worried about it because it's June. I know that we want to see practice clips and guys out there playing, running around, but it is June. OTAs are not the time to panic if a guy isn't out there. The real question and the real conversation is going to be whether they're ready for training camp and eventually the preseason. I like it for now. We'll see how it progresses. But for the most part, there's no reason to rush Bland back, rush Ezeraku back. Deron Bland is coming back from his second foot injury. Donovan Ezeraku had a torn labrum that he had to have repaired. The worst thing that could happen is they try to push them back just to get them to be able to practice in OTAs or be out there on the field, and then they get injured and it causes a setback, and then they're not ready for training camp and eventually the preseason and then the regular season. I like this way. Let them heal, let them work with the training staff, and have them ready for training camp. Note number 3, Brian Schottenheimer talked about some guys that have stood out through the first couple of practices that the Cowboys have had. And this is interesting because he said 3 names. So these are 3 names that stuck out in his mind, and he chose to say out loud to the media. And now, listen, I don't know exactly how many guys are on the roster, but there's probably at least 88. I don't know if they're at 90 yet. 88, 89. He mentioned CeeDee Lamb, which, of course he did. Star wide receiver. George Pickens isn't there. CeeDee's all business through all of that. Malachi Lawrence, first-round pick. Glad to hear that they've been impressed with what they've seen so far from him. That's a good sign of things to come. And then Kalen Carson. Yes, you heard that. You heard that right. Kalen Carson. CeeDee Lamb making plays is completely expected. But Malachi Lawrence and Kalen Carson, those guys being named is really, really interesting, and then hopefully a good sign. Shotty probably isn't talking about Malachi Lawrence, the Cowboys' second first-round pick, being a week 1 starter, but this is how young guys start building momentum, how guys can start stacking days, building up to training camp, and then the preseason, and then into the regular season. So for Shotty to name drop him over a guy like Caleb Downs, your other first-round pick, which Shotty did talk about Downs. We'll talk about him in just a minute, but just for him to mention him is a really, really good sign. And then Kalen Carson. I've complained and worried about the cornerback depth on this team quite a bit this offseason. I still haven't really talked about Kalen Carson as even a depth option, as being a part of this team, but that would be a big, big development if he can stay healthy, stay on the field, and kind of get back the confidence that we saw in his rookie season, or at least rookie training camp, because it's been a tough career so far, a tough road for him over the past, what is this, year 3 now? Kind of like Malachi Lawrence. Shotty's probably not talking about him in terms of, wow, we just found a starter. We have a cornerstone piece for the 2026 defense. Christian Parker's still going to settle all of that. This is Kalen Carson's 3rd defensive coordinator in his 3-year NFL career. He suffered injuries. He's really been up and down. Mike Zimmer really liked him. Last year, I don't even know if he played a snap. I think he had another injury. But for Brian Schottenheimer to come out and say, again, out of all the cornerbacks, the safeties, the linebackers, the defensive linemen, for him to say Kalen Carson, that's really a positive for him. And they need as much depth as humanly possible at the cornerback spot. Everybody. Bland's health is a concern. Revel's health is a concern. Even Devin Moore, the pick from Florida this year, their 4th-round pick, health is a concern. I want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's show, Prize Picks. The best daily fantasy sports app on the market, allows you to make picks on everything you can imagine. Choose if Jamar Chase will go for more or less on his receiving yards. Select if Caleb Williams will go for more or less on his passing yards. Make picks on Artist of the Year for Spotify streams, the game winner on a number of different games in the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, and even make picks on the next president. The NBA playoffs are here. You can choose the game winner. You can choose more or less on points, rebounds, assists, and personally, one of my favorite features, the social feed. You can go to the For You tab and just see what others are choosing to make their picks on. You can go to a following where you follow certain people to see their picks, just like Jason right here, 38x payout on baseball. All I have to do is click copy lineup, choose my entry, and then click submit lineup. It's that easy to follow along. So whatever you enjoy watching during the NFL offseason, join Prize Picks and use code HMA. And when you play your first $5, get $50 more to play with. Thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to it. Note number 4, Rashawn Gary is already being viewed as a leader. Shotty called Rashawn Gary a grown-ass man, and he said he's been blown away by Gary's professionalism and leadership. I saw a couple of responses to a tweet about Rashawn Gary and Shotty talking about him and all that. People were talking about, we don't need a leader, we need a guy that can get after the quarterback. We need a guy that can do all of the... And I don't think I can overestimate the impact that a veteran, a guy that's been in the NFL for 9+ years, can have on young players. Ezra Raku, second year. Malachi Lawrence, first year player. LT Overton, even. I would still consider Sam Williams a young player. Having that guy that can stabilize the room, be a stabilizing presence for your young pass rushers is a really, really good thing. And here's the thing about Rashawn Gary. Can he rush the passer? He did have 7.5 sacks last year, but the Cowboys aren't building a pass rush around one guy. They don't need Rashawn Gary to be that guy. Shotty pointed it out in his press conference. He said the best pass rushing teams don't just have one guy. It is easier to take one guy out of the game than it is to have a full defensive line of guys that can get after the quarterback, that can push the pocket. The first team that popped into my mind, and the team he's probably referring to, is the Seattle Seahawks that just won the Super Bowl. And I might be going out on a little bit of a limb here, kind of ranting a little bit, but Rashawn Gary making that move feels a lot like we really could have used Tank Lawrence last year. We could use a guy like Tank Lawrence on this team because he has the veteran presence. He's good against the run, okay rushing the passer. He can help your younger guys come along as leaders and players, be that positive mentor in the locker room. Like, it's like the Cowboys, when they made that move, and now that they're getting here, they were thinking the entire time, like, we need a guy like that. They saw what it did for the Seattle Seahawks, having Tank Lawrence. Boye Mafe, I think, had 2.5, 3 sacks. Like, there wasn't a one-man show in Seattle rushing the passer, and you saw how that defense turned out. So Rashawn Gary stepping up for those younger guys is a huge positive. Number 5, Shotty talked about the joint practices that they're going to have with the Rams and New Orleans Saints in Oxnard. This one doesn't tell us a whole lot about what's going on in the field in OTAs, but it will tell us a lot about what's going on in training camp and where this team stands. If you guys remember last year, they had a joint practice with the Rams. It did not go well. I remember that the Jimmy Garoppolo was out there. Matthew Stafford wasn't playing at all, and they were lighting the first team defense up, lighting them up. On the other side, the Cowboys offense was having a pretty good day. It was kind of push and shove, but overall, the Cowboys offense, much better than the Cowboys defense. You're going to be practicing with a Super Bowl contender in the Los Angeles Rams. That is good for your evaluation. You're going to get to figure out your left tackle spot real quick with Myles Garrett and Byron Young and that Los Angeles Rams defense. And then you're going to get to see with your defense, are you legit? Can you slow down Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. If Matthew Stafford, I know he has the back issues and all that. Is he going to be practicing? Is he going to show up in a joint practice? I don't know. I just love the measuring stick that it allows the Cowboys to have for all of us to talk about when it gets here in August. And then our 6th and final note, Caleb Downs is obviously earning praise. Caleb Downs, 11th overall pick. We know what kind of player he is. We talked all about his leadership on the field, off the field. Brian Schottenheimer said something today that is about the highest praise that you can get as a young player coming into the NFL, is that Caleb Downs doesn't make the same mistake twice. That is one of the best things that you can hear about a young player in really any sport. It speaks to the processing, the coachability, and the mental development that this kid has. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's a world where Caleb Downs is the green dot guy in 2026. Now, there's other options. There's veteran options. Maybe Jalen Thompson is that guy because they gave him $12 million per year. That's the most money they've given a Cowboys free agent in the past 15 years. So maybe he's the green dot guy. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if Caleb Downs is in the conversations, that they give him an opportunity to do that. With all of the things that they've been saying about him as a player, his mentality, his processing, his coachability, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we get to training camp and then to the preseason and regular season, and Downs is pretty much running this defense. So that's going to do it for today's show. That is 6 notes from Cowboys OTAs. And I'll throw this one a little cherry on top. George Pickens is expected to be at Cowboys minicamp, which is not voluntary. It is mandatory. He has to be there or he risks getting fined. And then we're going to have to talk about it. And I really don't want to talk about it. That's why I didn't add it in my 6 notes. That's why it's 6 notes and not 7. Hopefully George Pickens is there. We can lay all of this to rest. He's going to play on the Cowboys in 2026. The best NFL offense keeps their number 1 wide receiver, their number 2 wide receiver, and we have a great year after the defense gets better. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I love you all, and I'll see you next time.